group of agronomists has driven almost 4 hours along dirt roads and almost unidentifiable tracks across the savannah to reach this small village in central Colombia's Guaviare province. They're delivering farm tools to an aboriginal group that has settled here, the Nucacmacu.
Pablo y Mayoli.
In recent years, fighting between the Colombian army, the FARC guerrillas and paramilitary groups has limited the Nucacmacu's ability to hunt and move around the forest. Many have been forced to settle in the outskirts of small towns and villages like this one, far from their traditional hunting area. Juan Pablo Ortiz, an agronomist for the government's food security network, says this is where these farm tools come in.
Pues el propósito no es cambiar el estilo de vida, el propósito es como...
We're not trying to change their lifestyle, but what we want to do is to complement their lifestyle. The Nucac will continue to be hunters, but we want them to grow crops like beans so that they have another food option when they are in their base camps they have near the village. There are several crops which settlers have already begun to introduce to them.
The Nucacmacu are nomadic. They only began to come into contact with the outside world in the 1970s. Members of this group speak some Spanish. They wear second-hand Western clothes and enjoy soft drinks. They've also begun to use money. For some anthropologists, projects like this one that teach the Nucacmacu how to grow beans are eroding their culture even further, even if they're meant to provide them with another source of food. Colombia's armed conflict is not only changing the way indigenous people eat. Antonio Rojas is a tribal elder from the Hebe group. He says he fled his home because he tried to stop the FARC guerrillas from recruiting his community's young people. Rojas says the Hebe and other groups are losing their identity.
Solamente tenemos lengua no hemos votado.
We still speak our language. We haven't thrown that away, but I think the younger generation will forget to fish, to handle spears or traditional construction materials. We don't have the trees or plants that we used to make our things here.
Rojas says traditional medicine has also been affected. The plants their shaman uses to make ointments, potions, and herbal remedies don't grow in this reservation. Here in Guaviare province, paramilitary groups fight the FARC guerrillas for control of drug trafficking routes and mineral resources. The army has taken over several cities and towns. It's now chasing the guerrillas deep in the jungle, and the rebels are using landmines to keep soldiers away. Much of this is happening on land along the home of tribes like the Hebe, making it almost impossible for them to live there. Colombian officials estimate 34 indigenous groups are facing cultural extinction. The Hebe are among them. More than half of their population of 1,200 are living elsewhere as refugees. The Nucacmacu are also on the list. There are less than 500 left. About half have fled their traditional lands. Anthropologist Moises Medrano is doing cultural impact studies on many of these endangered groups. He directs the Ministry of Culture's Populations Division.
I was recently talking with the Nucacmacu. They said that one difficulty they are facing, which we also see in other groups who are subject to forced displacement, is that the elders are losing their authority over children and youth. They say it is difficult for their youth to maintain their identity and to be proud of their indigenous heritage.
Many indigenous people have become accustomed to life outside the forest, and in doing so they've begun to change their traditions. Yesid Bernabe grew up in a small reservation just outside the provincial capital.
You know, nowadays we dress in Western clothes, we consume coffee, we drink alcohol, we enjoy having a girlfriend, a white woman in San Jose, in the city. Maybe we like to visit the city once in a while. That is what we want.
Bernabe argues these Western tastes make him no less of a Hebe, and he proudly says his community is making some efforts to promote its culture. After our interview, Bernabe walks me over to a maloca, a round structure with no walls and a large roof made of thatched palm. His community stages cultural reunions here. The reservation also received money from the Education Ministry to build a wooden primary school that holds some 40 children. Classes where students will be taught in the Heb language will begin here next year. The Colombian government is replicating these sorts of projects and reservations across the country. But Colombia's indigenous leaders say that the best solution to their cultural problems and to forced displacement would be for the army, guerrillas and settlers to stay off indigenous territory. Bernabé says he will still stay in his small reservation near the city, but he seems to think along the same lines. If we continue to let them push us around, they will think of us as children, he says. But we're adults, and we're the governors of this land. Manuel Rueda, CBC News, San Jose, Colombia.